This is Joe McConnell reporting to you from Pasadena, California, the Rose Bowl, and this year the site of Super Bowl 11. For the third time now in the last 4 years, the Minnesota Vikings have been to the Super Bowl. It's a ball.
Super Sunday, a day for champions. Another year, another title for the Minnesota Vikings. Pro football fans in Minnesota have grown accustomed to the rhapsody of easy winning. The Vikings have won the Central Division Championship 8 out of the last 9 years, and the race usually isn't close. The result of a game in Metropolitan Stadium is completely predictable. The Vikings always win, and the fans love the monotony. It's like a movie buff watching Casablanca for the 100th time. Play it again, Vikes. The Vikings are champions not because they tear their opponents apart or bulldoze them into submission, but because they're a team that year after year, Sunday after Sunday, does whatever is necessary to win. The Vikings are like a rubber raft. Every time someone pushes them down in one spot, they bob up in another. Stop the run, and they'll win with the pass. Prevent the pass, and they'll win with the run. If the offense can't score, the special teams will. The Vikings win because of the big things, but also because of the little things. Last season, blocked extra points gave Minnesota 1-point victories over Chicago and Detroit. And a blocked field goal saved a 10-10 tie with Los Angeles. In all, the Vikings batted down 15 kicks in 1976. So the Viking mystique can only be explained in bits and pieces. There is no one thing. There never is. One large piece, however, is head coach Bud Grant, known to the sporting world as the Great Stone Face. But to those who have played for him, he is no mystery.
I guess of all the coaches I've been associated with, Bud is the easiest to like because he treats the players with the utmost fairness, and that's all a player can ask for. You don't have to be liked, but they certainly have to be treated fairly, and Bud certainly does that. He also is the best coach I've ever seen at evaluating what his personnel can do. He never asks them to do more than he thinks they're capable of doing. He's been accused of not having emotional teams, and I think there's a reason for that. Emotion is great if you win a game, but where do you go if you're all sky high and piped up and you happen to lose? It's difficult to come back from one of those kinds of efforts. Bud would rather see his team reach a particular level of competence, something that he knows he can count on week in and week out, and from there he can build and do the things that he has to do to win a game. He's not nearly the cold man that people think he is. He's a very warm and feeling person, but he has tremendous self-control and doesn't show it to people he doesn't want to.
To win and endure, says Bud Grant, you don't have to be brilliant, just determined. When the Vikings have the football, Grant's determination is translated into ball control. Minnesota ranks 6th in total offense, but they led the league in ball control, running more plays per game and moving the ball more consistently than anyone else. Most teams establish control of the ball by running, not the Vikings. Quarterback Fran Tarkenton moves the team with passes, mixing short flips to his running backs with bombs to his wide receivers, Sammy White and Ahmad Rashad, number 28. In 1976, Tarkenton led the NFL in completions, and despite his penchant for throwing anywhere at any time, he almost never threw the ball to the wrong team. Only 8 of his 412 passes were intercepted. Tarkenton does not throw perfect spirals, but he never did. Spirals are knuckleballs, though. He has completed more passes for more yards and more touchdowns than any quarterback in history. In spite of all of his records, Tarkenton's most notable characteristic is that he never gets discouraged and rarely injured. He gives you the impression that there is no situation in football he hasn't seen or can't find some way to salvage. No quarterback is his equal when it comes to reading defenses. He can usually anticipate an oncoming blitz and send a receiver racing into the weakened secondary. While the Vikings use their receivers on a wide variety of pass routes, their running backs work a mean one-way street. Chuck Foreman, number 44, again led the Vikings in rushing with another 1,000-yard season. Along with Foreman, Minnesota used Brent McClanahan, number 33, Robert Miller, Ron Gross, and Sammy Johnson, number 48. All of them head-down, inch-by-inch fighters, Bud Grant-type athletes. Men who beat you not with flash and finesse, but with guts and determination. The rugged heights of pro football are not conquered by offense alone. The road to the summit is traveled only by those teams who can prevent touchdowns as well as score them. In 1976, the Vikings permitted the fewest points in the NFC. Their defense is never fooled and rarely gives up a long touchdown play. The secondary of Nate Wright, Bobby Bryant, Nate Allen, Paul Krause, and Jeff Wright allowed only 8 touchdown passes. It was the lowest total in the league, and only one of the touchdown passes was longer than 25 yards. In the defensive line, the old purple people eaters are not as quick as in years past, but they can still reach the quarterback. It just takes a little longer. Tackle Alan Page, number 88, is still the leader. He led the team in quarterback sacks with 19 and remains one of the only tackles in football strong enough to single-handedly defeat a double-team block. Page's exploits have tended to obscure the solid contributions of the Vikings' other tackle, Doug Sutherland, number 69. Runners who get by Sutherland and Page have the unenviable task of facing Jeff Seaman, number 50, Minnesota's middle linebacker. The Viking linebackers do not play an attacking type defense. They rarely blitz. Instead, corner linebackers Wally Hilgenberg and Matt Blair, number 59, lay back and concentrate on pass coverage. Between the 20-yard lines, the Vikings give up territory freely. But when their goal line is threatened, they are almost impossible to move. During the course of the season, Minnesota had 11 successful goal line stands inside their 10-yard line. Minnesota's crafty veterans sag and bend, but never collapse. A football team is like a little boy. Every year it changes. During the last 2 seasons, Minnesota has added 25 new young players, and behind every Viking starter is a capable replacement. Against the Pittsburgh Steelers, Bob Lee replaced Fran Tarkenton and won the game with a touchdown pass to Ahmad Rashad. When Alan Page finishes law school and hangs out his shingle, his position could be filled by James White, number 72, last season's first draft pick. While White will have to wait to play regularly, other young Vikings have already gained some valuable playing time. Men like Doug Dumler, Neil Claybo, Wes Hamilton, and Mark Mullaney, number 77. And still others like Wendland Hall and Fred McNeil, number 54. But of all Minnesota's new players, none was more exciting than Rookie of the Year Sammy White, number 85. White's youthful exuberance led to some mistakes, like doing a one-handed celebration 5 yards before the goal line. But by the season's end, he had reached the end zone with the ball 10 times, more often than any receiver in the NFC. Because of his ability to make the big play, White became the target of every hit man in the league. But he quickly proved that he had the hands and the heart to go with his speed. Beneath the sparkling surface of new young stars flows the strong tide of proven experience. Jim Marshall, number 70, has weathered 17 seasons in the rugged climate of pro football. He has started every game the Minnesota Vikings have ever played and established a record of endurance that may never be matched. He is indestructible, says Coach Grant. So apparently is Carl Eller, number 81, a veteran of 13 years. Although mellow and even-tempered most of the time, Eller once used his fist to smash a blackboard during the halftime of a game the Vikings were losing. Inspired, Minnesota rallied to win the game. So here in the Northland, the symbols of time come together. Old players and young, all pros and rookies. A fertile mixture that blossomed into another division championship in 1976 and earned the Vikings a date with the Washington Redskins in the playoffs. The late season drive that got the Redskins into the playoffs had some people calling Coach George Allen's squad a Cinderella team. But the clock struck midnight the first time Minnesota had the ball. A 41-yard dash by Brent McClanahan set up the first of 5 Minnesota touchdowns. Stu Voigt scored it on a pass from Fran Tarkenton. 5 minutes later, the Vikings increased their lead when Sammy White grabbed a deflected pass for a touchdown. The Vikings' offense was quick striking and deceptive, but it was sustained by the strong, steady play of Ron Yeri, Steve Riley, Charles Goodrum, Ed White, Mick Tingelhoff, and Stu Voigt. Their efforts opened the pathway to victory.
How bad you want it, and I believe that. We wanted it bad.
Greatest game we played. Everybody played great.
We wanted it, and we got it.
I think that this crowd is finally got it, in the sense, the feeling of emotion, the sense of victory. I said today that I even saw some history made. I saw Bud Grant smile real big, and I think that's a good sign.
For the second time in 3 years, the championship of the National Conference would be decided in a game between the Los Angeles Rams and the Minnesota Vikings. Early in the first quarter, the Rams battered the smaller Vikings with a drive that carried to the Minnesota 1-yard line. A quarterback sneak by Pat Hayden on third down left the Rams 6 inches from the Minnesota goal line.
6 inches!
The fury of the Viking defense persuaded Ram coach Chuck Knox to try for a field goal instead of a touchdown.
Dempsey in to try for the field goal. This is a chip shot. There's a snap a bit high. The ball is down. The kick is blocked. It's going to be a touchdown. The Vikings are going to score. It's Bobby Bryant. At the 50 to 40, the 35 to 30, the 25 to 20 to 15 to 10 to 5. Touchdown on a blocked field goal. Nate Allen blocked it. Bobby Bryant scoops it out and goes the distance. Unbelievable.
Bryant's touchdown served as a hinge on which the game turned. In the second quarter, Fred Cox kicked a field goal. And this 62-yard run by Chuck Foreman set up another touchdown which expanded Minnesota's lead to 17-0. But the Rams are a veteran team. They have won 4 straight Western Division titles, and they do not give up easily. The Rams' defense forced 2 turnovers, and their offense converted both of them into touchdowns. The inspired Rams trailed by only 4 points, but their high hopes were dashed on the rocks of the Viking defense.
Back to pass. He has protection. Throw the long one over the middle. Intended for his play. Intercepted. By Bobby Bryant. Bobby Bryant with his second interception of the game. Double wing to the right side, and Francis will throw. Caught by Foreman to the 45. He's to the 50. Breaks away the 45 to 40. 35, 30. 25, 20. 15. Out of bounds at the 11-yard line. Going to hand off to Sammy Johnson. He gets a hole. He's inside the 5. And he's down. Touchdown. Sammy Johnson. Like the Super Bowl bound.
Somewhere there's a street of broken dreams. If you can't find it on the map, ask any Viking fan. He'll tell you it leads to the Super Bowl. The Vikings were 1 victory away from their greatest season ever. But the magic moment flickered and vanished, and the World Championship belonged to the Oakland Raiders. But as Captain Jim Marshall said, the Super Bowl is not the end of the world. If you lose, the sun will rise again. When it does, it will catch the Minnesota Vikings smiling. Because this is a team that came far in 1976. And a team that can look to the future and say, we will go farther yet.